When complex societies of sophistication and intricacy, bureaucracies become very vulnerable if some little quirk appears and the society no longer operates on empiricism, meritocracy, but it's governed by ideology or superstition. In a sophisticated society like the United States, where we have complexities of travel and power, and we have a diverse population from all over the world, if you don't have a margin of error, and if we don't follow the norms that gave us that prosperity, security, and freedom, then the system starts to break down. When you operate on anti-meritocratic DEI orthodoxies and you have ideologies that overrule common sense and tradition, then you get something like a total systems collapse. Hello, this is Victor Davis Hanson for the Daily Signal. I'd like to talk about a concept called systems collapse. Anthropologists use it, historians use it. It refers to complex societies that suddenly implode because the level of sophistication and intricacy, bureaucracies becomes such that it's very vulnerable if some little quirk appears and the society no longer operates on empiricism, meritocracy, but it's governed by ideology or superstition. We usually look at systems collapse in terms of, the Mycenaean Greeks, to take one example. Very sophisticated linear B tablets, palatial culture, and yet something went wrong in that concentrated structure of the palace, and the entire society collapsed. We are a very sophisticated society. We require meritocracy, empiricism, credentials, and we have very sophisticated transportation, education, healthcare, etc., etc. And if we don't follow the norms that gave us that prosperity, security, and freedom, then the system starts to break down. And we've seen the indices of that. The Pacific Palisades fire didn't have to happen. It didn't have to destroy the entire beautiful and ancient neighborhood of Palisades, and it didn't have to mean that they haven't even started rebuilding. But when you operate on anti-meritocratic DEI orthodoxies, and you have ideologies that overrule common sense and tradition, then you get something like a total systems collapse. So the mayor knew it was fire season. She knew that the Santa Ana winds were approaching. She knew that the hills were dry, but she was in Ghana. Why is Ghana important? I guess it has some DEI connection to her. We know that the hillsides need to be gleaned of brush, cleaned. Green orthodoxy says you can't do that from global warming. We know that the head of Los Angeles Power and Water came from PG&E. She was a DEI appointment, and the result was there were fire hydrants that didn't work, and there was a reservoir critical to the survival of the Palisades that had been empty for months. We know that the fire chief herself had her budget cut by Karen Bass, the mayor, but we also know that she kept haranguing people about DEI rather than prioritizing, at least publicly and in her communiques, the need for preventive fire protection. I could go on about the zoning, but what I'm getting at is when you have a sophisticated society living in a fire-prone area with a known 2-century history of Santa Ana winds in the late fall and early winter, then nothing can go wrong. It's an unnatural habitat. And yet what happened? DEI and green orthodoxy overruled traditions of trial and error, empirical knowledge about how to treat fires, how to prevent them, how to get water to parched areas, how to clean hillsides, why the mayor has to be there, why the deputy mayor, he was under house arrest for phoning in a bomb threat. Why was he even a deputy mayor, someone of that caliber? Finally, we saw that same systems collapse with the tragic killing of Iryna Zarutska, and everything went wrong. First of all, Why would you enter a light rail car without having to have a ticket? This was an honor system. It encouraged people to abuse the system, to think that you really don't have to pay anything for a free ride. It said you couldn't have a concealed weapon, but what does that mean when you don't even have security to check people? You can't stop and frisk people apparently anymore. She came in there, and there were 4 people around her, including the assailant. He killed her. But what kind of society is it where the 4 people adjacent behind her just walk by her as he's watched the killer commit this horrific act of cutting her throat? And then after he leaves and he mutters, got the white girl, then they don't do anything. They didn't do anything to stop it. They didn't do anything just to walk a few feet over, a foot over, and try to help her in her death throes. What ideology is that allows that to happen? Why would Van Jones say that this has nothing to do with race when 80% of the people around the killer were African American, as he was, but he selected the one person who was white, and the people around didn't do anything to help her? Why did the mayor almost, Vi Lyles, almost immediately say, arresting our way out of this won't work. We can't demonize the homeless. We can't show this video. Why didn't she say instead, as we know from the history of criminal justice, we've got to find this perpetrator immediately. We've got to make sure that he faces stiff sentences. We can't let people who are 14-time felons out. This was a mistake, and I promise that won't happen. Why didn't she do it? She didn't do it because she knew that message would not appeal to the constituencies that had elected her, because it was a total systems collapse. And finally, Teresa Stokes, the magistrate. Why did she let Carlos Brown, the killer, out? He had 14 felonies. He had just committed a felony. Why did she let him out? And the answer is a systems collapse. Why would you have Teresa Stokes, who had never passed the North Carolina bar, as a magistrate? She really had no credentials in that sense as a legal expert. More disturbingly, she co-owned an alternate treatment center. So when she was sentencing felons, convicted felons, or felons that were up for trial, she was, in some cases, directing them to a center in which she had a profit motive. Why did all this happen? Why did the media suppress it, suffocate it? Because it disturbed the narrative. The narrative was that there is no such thing as inordinate black crime, and to talk about it violates the canons of unempirical or non-empirical critical race theory, critical legal theory, the new anti-racism of Professor Kendi. And the result is that no one wanted to cover the story, even though had the roles been reversed racially, it would have been a George Floyd moment. What am I getting at? I'm getting at that in a sophisticated society like the United States, where we have complexities of travel and power and construction and safety, and we have a diverse population from all over the world, and we have 55 million people who were not born in the United States residing here, 16%. You don't have a margin of error. And the only way you can succeed in the way that prior generations have is to insist on common sense, knowledge of what worked in the past, and meritocracy and empiricism. But if you throw all that away and you go the superstitious route and adopt diversity, equity, inclusion mandates in place of meritocracy, or you say that those hillsides are ready to go up in flames, but I can't do anything about them because green orthodoxy says it would be contrary to nature, then you're going to have a systems collapse. And we saw that in both cases. Thank you very much. This is Victor Davis Hanson for the Daily Signal. Thank you for tuning in to the Daily Signal. Please like, share, and subscribe to be notified for more content like this. You can also check out my own website at victorhanson.com and subscribe for exclusive features in addition.